your head, greet the rising sun. Greet the rising sun. Some people think to harvest happiness by weeding troubles, easing every stress. The trouble is that troubles never end. Get rid of one, and you face his friend. And you face his friend. It's in your heart. The songs of joy resound. You'll hear the echoes in the world around. Wind on a hill sounds lonely if you're sad, free if you're free, cheerful if you're glad. Cheerful if you're glad. Friends, come with me. We'll chant of battles won, shouts not of anger. Joy will be our gun. Before the light, the veils of sorrow rend. In inner freedom, all delusions end. All delusions end.
Good morning, everyone. We're Nayaswami's Mantra Devi and Krishnadas, and it's our joy to be with you here today. Special welcome to all of our guests who have come to learn to meditate, to enjoy the vibration of Ananda. We're happy to have you here with us. This morning, I'll read from Rays of the One Light, and the reading is, Did God create the universe or become it? Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. The Gospel of St. John, chapter 1, contains a passage that explains the essential truth that creation is the process of becoming. The universe is not separate from God, the Creator, but a part of Him, even as our own dream creations during sleep are figments of our consciousness. God's is the life, God's the reality. Not a melody could be composed, not a poem written, were the melody and the poem not already there, simply waiting to be expressed. In Him was life, and the life was the light of men, and the light shineth in darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not. Ego-directed desire is like static. It distorts the radioed messages of the infinity. But the pristine impulse from the divine, undistorted by limitation and delusion, is the life that gives rise to all that is. As the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita states, I am the fluidity of water. I am the silver light of the moon and the golden light of the sun. I am the Om chanted in all the Vedas, the cosmic sound moving as if soundlessly through the ether. I am the manliness of men. I am the good, sweet smell of the moist earth. I am the luminescence of fire, the sustaining life of all living creatures. I am self-offering in those who would expand their little lives into cosmic life. O Arjuna, know me as the eternal seed of all creatures. In the perceptive, I am their perception. In the great, I am their greatness. In the glorious, it is I who am their glory. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om.
Morning, everyone. Start by reading from Whispers from Eternity, Prayers and Poems by Paramahansa Yogananda. I demand to return home. Impediments beware, flee my path. I am homeward bound. Through the long corridors of time, stumbling often into pits of error, then lifted out by thy unseen hand. I have walked painfully. Discouraging darkness, barbed wire fences of habit, stony embankments of indolence, mountains of indifference, oceans of unfaithfulness, sirens of sense longing may stand even now in my path, as if to prevent my onward march to thy palace. But 1,000,000 kingdoms and sextillions of years of unblemished worldly happiness will never tempt me again to turn away from thee. It's quite a journey, just was described there. So today's topic, did God create the universe or did he become it? God created the universe by becoming it. We'll now have the offertory. If it could be that simple, lunch wouldn't be ready, would it? So I wanted to first talk about this process of becoming that was mentioned in the readings. The process of becoming, obviously God is absolute. God sits beyond creation, perfect, still, immortal, infinite. As Yogananda talked about the teachings of Sanatana Dharma, Satchidanandam, God ever existing, ever conscious, ever new bliss. But his creation that he became is that in the manifestation of it is in a process of becoming. And we are part of that creation. So we are evolving. We are evolving spiritually. Now, science would have us believe that there is no purpose to the universe, and that this evolution is basically physical, and that it's about survival of the fittest and the preservation of the species and the procreation of the species, and all about, the brawn overcomes, and that's how we survive. But Swami Kriyananda, when I say master, it's Yogananda. When I say Swamiji, it's our founder, Swami Kriyananda. So in Swami Kriyananda's book, Out of the Labyrinth, he talks about how there's much more happening than this physical evolution. It's an evolution of consciousness. And the evolution that we're going through is one of seeking greater awareness and trying to trace our steps back to experiencing the essence of who and what we really are. And that's joy and love and light. That's our origin. That's our destiny. It's our origin. It's where we've come from. It's our essence. It's our destiny. So Yogananda comes and he tells us, comes to the West and he says, it's always been this way. And that I'm going to show you how to trace your steps back. First, he helps us realize it, that we aren't just here lost in this world with no meaning, with no deeper purpose. So in Out of the Labyrinth, Kriyananda talks about that the lower species, they're evolving. As the scriptures say, it takes 8 million lifetimes to reach the human level, 1 to 3 million lifetimes once we are in the human form to find freedom. And that these lower life forms are evolving, but everything is evolving, seeking. Life is seeking to fulfill itself. And then once we hit the human level, if it was only about survival of the fittest, Swami says, well, why would our brains be 3 times as large as the next level down from us in evolution. He says there's much more happening there. He goes, it wouldn't take a brain this large to learn to roam the plains and sort of beat down and find our food and whatever it takes to survive. He says, what we're seeking, we are engineered for divinity. We are seeking God. And Yogananda came and gave us our sadhana, gave us the practices on how to accomplish that. This is what all the masters come. They come and say, ye are gods. And they give us a way to discover it, to have it unfold within us. So there's a story about a woodcutter, and he goes off into the woods to sort of gather his wood, and he comes across a brahmachari. And this holy man tells him, he says, my good man, go forward. So he gathers his wood and he comes back home. And a couple of days later, he remembers what the brahmachari said. He said, the brahmachari said to go forward. So the next time he's in the woods, he goes deeper, a little bit deeper. And there he discovers innumerable sandalwood trees. So he harvests the trees and he takes them back to the market and he sells them and becomes very, very rich. So then a few more days pass and he thinks, well, the brahmachari said to go deeper. He didn't say stop there. So he goes a little deeper, and there at the banks of a river, he discovers a silver mine. And there he takes all the silver and takes it back again to the marketplace and sells the silver, and he became so very, very rich. He was in such happiness from the riches. So there again, a few days later, he remembers what the brahmachari said, the holy man, and he says, my good man, go forward. So he goes across the river, and there he discovers a gold mine. There he mines the gold and brings it back, and so on. Again, a few more days pass. He goes deeper into the forest. He says, the holy man didn't say stop there. He just kept saying go forward. So he goes and he discovers a diamond, heaps of diamonds and rubies and gems, and he takes those and he brings them back. And he became so rich, richer than the god of wealth himself. So this is what Yogananda came to tell us. He said that if it was just left to our own devices, we would think that in possessions we'd become happy. Or even with a little bit of sadhana, we become a little bit of peace, get a little bit of peace, a little bit of joy, and we might stop there. But would we be happy? He's out in front telling us to go forward. He described from his own experience, he lived it and described it and told us where our destiny lies. His poem Samadhi, if you read it, that is all of our destiny. I was thinking, God, it must be so. Otherwise it'd be a cruel joke, wouldn't it? We didn't ask to be born. Now I'm not just talking about this lifetime, I'm talking about we didn't ask to be conceived as a soul. We're just thrown into this. And there we are. We're just on the treadmill for a great many lifetimes, and then at some point we wake up, and then we are perhaps at some point brought into the good karma of being exposed to teachings like these, being God sending us a guru and showing us the way out. And he described it in vivid detail, and it's so beautiful. And that's our destiny. And I would think, well, that makes sense because, for God to do this to us, it must be very, very good. At times, we don't think so, and we don't quite believe it. But I think, as Swamiji always says, that those that have made the trip say that it was very, very worth it. So that's what we could look forward to. Now, what about this light? This light that's shining in darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not? Well, he's talking about our consciousness. The light is right within us, and it's always shining. It's always shining forth. But the scriptures say that we don't realize it, that it is who and what we are, but it's not anything that we experience right off. And even as we do, it starts to unfold. It just gets better and better, and we are to go forward. But this light, the scriptures talk about is sort of hidden. It's covered. There are veils or sheaths, or they talk about koshas. these layers, incrustations that are over the soul whose essence is light. And our sadhana, by daily sadhana, we tear away those veils. We sort of whittle down the incrustations until the light of our soul shines forth. And as it shines forth into us, through us, from our own very own soul, we are blessed by that. And we have this light all the time right within us. We just need to realize it. Now, when we were in Los Angeles, we used to go down to Venice Beach occasionally, particularly when maybe people would visit. We'd want to, show them this very interesting experience, Venice Beach. But I don't want to go into that in great detail. Just that it's sort of a collage of colors and a cacophony of sound, and every life form you could imagine is walking around there, and so on the beach there, most evenings, but particularly on the weekend, and particularly at a full moon weekend, the drummers gather, and they're out there on the beach, sort of near water's edge, and they just start collecting. There could be 150, 200 people just, drumming. And as you hear it from a distance, you think, wow, what is that? And we were with some friends, and, they were saying, what is that? I said, those are war drums. They're gathering on the bank over there. But so we'd go over there because it was just a thunder of sound. This energy was, just very, the force, the magnitude was, really thrilling. So why I bring it up is that it's not legal to be on the beach after dark. So at dusk, you have to sort of disperse groups. So here there is this large group, but they're lost in their drumming. So what the police do is there's the beach on one side, and then there's two pickup trucks here and one here. And they just sit and wait, and they let them have their fun, And then right as dusk approaches, they put on their lights, their brights, and they just start driving, inching towards the group. They don't get out, they don't beep, they don't make any big to-do about it. They just know that it's time to disperse this group. So they put on their lights and they just drive towards it. And the outer levels closest to the vehicles sort of stop drumming and they move away. But the ones on the interior, they're still lost in it. And they just keep driving forward until it all dissolves, and it's gone. So I was thinking that, we have to take our sadhana and we have to take that light and shine it into the darkness, into the very crevices and nooks and crannies of every part of our consciousness, and expose it to the light. And then the light will shine in the darkness, and the darkness that comprehended it not will vanish as if it's never been there. So, entering this new year, we have, as you know, Yogananda brought so many teachings, the precepts and the practices and the techniques. We have more than we can do in any day, one day or in a lifetime. But he said, if you just do 10% of what I've brought, you can find God. But everything that he brought, so I started thinking, well, because we're told this is important, that's important. Meditation is the foundation of our life, our spiritual life. But attunement with the Guru is very important. Then we have loyalty as the first law of God. Then we have, all of our techniques. Humility, So I was thinking, well, just, how do we sort through this? Because I'm thinking, well, give me the most important thing so I can concentrate on that. But obviously they all sort of dovetail or make a complete sadhana, practices of attitude as well as, meditation techniques. And we have to, use it all. But I hit on something. I thought, okay, Master said that intensity is everything. Intensity of awareness. So whatever we're doing, we need to bring to bear intensity. Now, not like we're in the world when we think, wow, that guy's intense. What we're talking about there is someone that is in tension. So we don't want to be in tension about it, because one of the prerequisites is physical relaxation and mental relaxation, isn't it, for our techniques? So we need to be relaxed, but we need to be very focused, and we need to bring intensity to it. Intensity is everything. Intensity of awareness. Be intensely aware of everything you do. That's what Yogananda said. So we don't have to look very far to find a perfect example of that in Swami Kriyananda. Everything he does is with focused attention. If you read his path, his autobiography, it's full of examples. If you read any of his books, the books themselves are examples of his focused thought. I'll just bring up two right here. In 1988, it was our 20th year anniversary, and the manager of Crystal Clarity called Swamiji and said, wouldn't it be great if we had a book commemorating our 20th year anniversary? And Swami said, yes, it would be very good, except that I just came out of a month's seclusion, semi-seclusion, and I just finished 7 books. And he didn't think he had it in him. But then a couple of days later, as he usually does, he says, I can't do it, but God and Guru can do it through me. So he sits down to write Cities of Light. So all is going well. He has 1 week to do it because something was going to begin. So this gave him extra incentive. So he begins writing. The second day, he writes all day long, and there's an electrician over at the Hermitage working on the system over there, and he trips the breaker. Swami loses that entire day's writing. Okay, so for most people, they think, well, maybe that's a sign, which we know isn't the case, or this just isn't happening, and now it would take the wind out of his sails. Instead, he just jumped in again, and he rewrote that day's work and rewrote the whole book. This isn't any light work either, just that one book. He was talking about crystal clarity, how a city of light would actually function and what the characteristics would be in the different aspects of a community, in government, in business, in relationships, in marriage, in education. It's all there. He wrote that in 4 days because he lost 1 day. Another example is he went to Egypt and he came back from a tour, and he was, about a month later, he woke up with a memory of one of the temples, Temple of Sobek, and a tune came to him, from his impressions there. So he grabbed his tape recorder, and he whistled the melody into his recorder. But he felt like he was in a musical flow. So he continued, and of other experiences he had on that trip. He wrote 16 melodies in 1 hour. Now you have to be focused to do that kind of thing. So to be intensely aware of everything we're doing, that's what we have to put into our sadhana. We just can't show up. Master says, if you can't do anything else, do show up. But try to do better than that. We have to try to do better than that. We have to put, as the Gita says, full force of soul in thy soul. Swamiji says that super consciousness cannot be attained by half-hearted efforts. Can't be attained by half-hearted efforts. So in everything we're doing, in our relationships, in our sadhana, look what we have. We have energization exercises. Master said if you're on a desert island and that's all you had, that would be the technique to have, because through it you would discover everything else. Hong Sa, do it 2 hours a day, you can become a master. Kriya Yoga. Jyotish was talking last week about one breath, one proper breath of Kriya is 1 year's evolution. There was a woman that came on the path in her 80s. It's talked about in Swamiji's autobiography. At that point, she threw herself totally into it. And at 80, every day, again, underscoring what Jyotish said last week at the power of that poem, God, 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 he said that she listened to it every day, all day long. And in 3 years, she found liberation. Just with that. And we have all of Master's writings and teachings, Swami's 100 books, and we have more than we can possibly absorb. But if we can find a purchase and kind of get into any one point with that intensity, it's sort of open, like Helen Keller when they were trying to teach her, English, and at some point she got it, and everything she grabbed, she sort of broke the code, and she was picking up and understanding everything. We just have to hit deep with one point, and then, so just one last thing to conclude, and even with that, all of the sadhana, the techniques and everything that we have will help us find God. Yogananda said that there's a personal element in the search for God, more important than the mastery of the whole science of yoga. There's a personal element in the search for God that is more important than mastery over the whole science of yoga. And he said that our Heavenly Father wants to be sure that we want Him above everything else. You could perfect all the teachings and the techniques. You could do whatever you do perfectly. But we could miss the point. The point is that in our heart, God abides, wants to fulfill Himself in us. But we have to reach. We have to open up. We have to understand that that really is, if nothing else, like the key. He wants to be assured that we want Him more than anything else. Above all, above everything, anything that we think will give us satisfaction, any desire, He steps aside and waits. He has eternity. So He waits till we wake up, till the light shines in the darkness, and then we comprehend that this is really what it's about. And then Master says, and then at that point, He plays hide and seek with us. Or He comes to us in a moment where we're worried, and He gives us a comforting thought, a time when we need some guidance, and He gives us what we need. He said, in time, directly or indirectly, He fulfills the devotee's every wish. I'll close with one quick story. It's in the autobiography of a yogi. Yogananda talks about one of his disciples, Mr. Dickinson. Mr. Dickinson, at 5 years old, his brother threw him into a pond, and he was drowning. He was going under for the third time. One of his brother's friends, not his brother, one of his brother's friends pulls him out. When he was going down for the third time, there was a light, and in that light he saw the face of someone. So about 12 years later, he's in Chicago with his mother, and they're walking down the street, and the face that he saw walks across the street and goes into this building. So he follows him, and the man was about to give a lecture. It was Swami Vivekananda. So he listens to the lecture, and afterwards he goes up to Swami Vivekananda and told him of his experience, and obviously hoping that Vivekananda would take him on as a student. But Vivekananda read his thoughts and said, "No, I'm not your guru. Your guru is yet to come. He'll come later, and he will give you a silver cup." So another 7 years or so passes, and he sees the advertisements of Swami Yogananda giving a talk, and he goes to that, and there he meets Yogananda and finds his guru, becomes a disciple. So he studies the teachings, his life proceeds as a disciple, and then he's out Mount Washington and would go every Christmas to the festivities. And this is 11 years, after 11 years of going to these Christmas parties. Yogananda's bringing out gifts, and you know what happened. He calls Mr. Dickinson up, and he presents him with a gift, and he opens it. And what's there? A silver cup. He was so overcome, he just sort of, in a daze, stumbled back and sat down and kind of sat with that for a time. And then he told Yogananda the whole story later, which Yogananda related in his autobiography. He said, at times I thought maybe that Vivekananda was talking figuratively and he didn't really mean literally a silver cup. But there it was. He said it took 43 years for it to manifest, but it came. So every desire, true desire, good desire, will be fulfilled. God has promised this. Yogananda has assured us of it. Master says there's nothing more we could desire. Nothing will give us the truest happiness, fulfillment, that we are seeking it, and nothing's going to give it to us except God. Self-realization. So in this next year, when we're trying to bring in, as Jyotish was saying, sort of memorize that poem, God, 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 every waking moment, try to keep that mantra, God, Christ, Gurus, that it will unfold for us, and at some point, a beautiful flower of self-realization will open, and that will be our full realization of what we are seeking, who we are. Our destiny lies in God realization, and we have to put full force of soul into our soul, put full intensity of awareness, be intensely aware of everything we do, all of our sadhana, all of our interactions with our guru bhais, and someday, perhaps not too distant in the future, we will find our realization.
In India there lived by the banks of a stream a hermit whose prayers chose applause for their theme. He gazed at the flowers and he smiled at the sun. Then he clapped with delight. Lord, he cried, oh, well done.
Well done, Lord, oh, very well done. The mountains had laughed with the gypsy clouds. The fields smiled to welcome the sun. All nature sings praises aloud. The fields smiled to welcome the sun. All nature sings praises aloud. The trees dance to show their elation. A day when God's earth has begun. And every true heart in creation in speechless wonder is bound. And every true heart in creation in speechless wonder is bound. Well done, Lord, oh, very well done. The joy that you planted in children's hearts, the thrill, Lord, in bearing a son, the hope when a trial departs. The thrill, Lord, in bearing a son, the hope when a trial departs. The gladness of men in their neighbors, of youth and its victories won. Our joys the proof of your labors. How wonderful, Lord, are your arms. your labors. How wonderful, Lord, are your arms. Well done, Lord, oh very well done. At last I've discovered the mystic key, the world's joy, oh secretive one, breathe lies to your sweetness in me. The world's joy, oh secretive one, breathe lies to your sweetness.